and we're introducing ourselves. This is, I'm just saying for the sake of the recording, this is Michael O'Neill, Communications Manager for the Green Party of the United States, newly hired, and this is the CCC webinar on media relations and public relations and messaging for candidates, and we're just doing a round of introductions. So, Lon, you can go next.
Hi, I'm Lon Diffenderfer. I'm from Pennsylvania, and I'm not part of any campaign right now, but I'm here to learn and hopefully become a valuable part of a campaign very soon.
Great. It's always great to hear folks who are, looking for training and absorbing skills in advance in anticipation of being in a campaign, because once things start, they start to move really quickly. All right, we've got an 860 area code. You can introduce yourself, please. All right, that's okay. We'll move on to Matthew. Matthew, if
hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Hi. Yeah, my name is Matthew Andrews. I live just outside of Boston, Massachusetts. I'm not currently involved in a particular campaign, but I've been party co-chair in the past, and I'm currently working with the Communications and Media Committee of the Green Rainbow Party of Massachusetts. So just interested in all of this kind of material.
That's wonderful, and a great point that our state parties and our county organizations need to have ongoing media operations and communication strategy, and not just during campaigns, right? We're still out there in the streets working on issues, being part of civic life, and so really happy that you joined this webinar.
Thank you.
So area code 317, if you can introduce yourself.
Hi, sorry I had you on mute. Adam Muehlhausen, I'm in Indianapolis. We have a candidate running for city council. The election is November 5th this year, so trying to just get some ideas for him.
Fantastic. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for doing.
Oh, you're very welcome. Steve?
Steve Mann. I'm with the Kansas City Greens. We have two candidates in a special election for Missouri House of Representatives November 5th, so I'm helping those candidates with their campaign.
Excellent. Lou, if you can please introduce yourself to the group.
Hey, folks, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. This is Lou Novak in Detroit, Michigan. I am not currently working, well, I am volunteering on the Howie Hawkins POTUS campaign. Not necessarily doing any media relations or communications work there. But we are here in Detroit, Michigan, going to be hosting the Presidential Nominating Convention next July. And I'm here to help prepare myself and our team in making sure we're going to be handling the media that we will ensure attend and participate or cover the convention next year in Detroit. Thank you.
Thank you. Preparation is the surest path to victory. All right, we've got an 816 area code number. If you can introduce yourself real quick.
That's also Steve. I'm online and on my phone.
Got it. Thank you, Steve. Area code 716.
That's me, Michael. Carol Sandy Prisblack.
Hey, Carol Sandy Prisblack. Great to see you or hear you on the call, and hope things are going well for you on the campaign trail.
I actually had to take a forced hiatus for a few weeks. My daughter was ill in Vermont. I'm just kind of getting back into things.
I'm very sorry to hear that, and I hope your daughter is doing better.
Yeah, she's getting there. Thank you.
Great. All right, Amanda, you can introduce yourself.
Hi, Amanda. I'm on the state coordinating committee of the Pacific Green Party. We've got several people looking to run in the elections next year, so just kind of how we can help to boost them.
Wonderful. Thank you. All right, area code 586, it looks like, or 585 perhaps.
Hey, it's Jason Nabolanek, Rochester.
Hey, Jason.
How's it going?
Great. Glad. Thanks for being on the call. Jason is a former National Party co-chair, so it's an honor to have him on the call. Is it Kara or Kara? for City Council? We've got Kara Bissell for City Council.
Are you able to hear me?
Maybe it's Kara?
Kara, yes.
I can hear you, yes.
Good.
Hey, Kara.
Yes, from Tucson, working for a City Council member, Ward 4 here in Tucson. Have a campaign going good under Mike Cease, the mayoral candidate. Looking to learn from this conference.
Great. And I'm hoping to show you something that adds to your skill set. So, got area code 207.
Hello, that's
area
me,
code
Lisa
207.
Savage in Maine. Hello, can you hear me?
Hi, Lisa.
Hello.
Hey, we
Hello?
sure can.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm in Maine, and I'm exploring a run for Susan Collins' Senate seat. We have ranked choice voting here in Maine for the first Senate election ever, so yay. And thank you for doing this webinar.
You're very welcome. Thank you. I want to thank everyone who's taken the time to join us, and I do have a special place in my heart for those campaign volunteers who who are not candidates themselves but have taken the time to learn some skills and collect some advice that they can add to campaigns, because we talk a lot about candidate recruitment, but for every campaign you need more than just a candidate. There are also key roles ranging from treasurer to press director to volunteer manager, and it really does take a team to win. So thank you for that, and of course, thank you to the candidates as well. But I think we talk a lot about, like I said, candidate recruitment, and I just wanted to give a little love to the volunteers as well. So we're going to get started. Like I said, my name is Michael O'Neill, and just a bit of contact information. I'll say it now, and then it'll be on near the end of the slideshow as well. But I suppose there's a lot of people who are just joining over the phone, so I will be sure to read all the relevant things from the slide. And my email address where you can reach me is meo@gp.org. That's MEO for Michael E. O'Neill @gp, as in greenparty.org. And feel free to hit me up if you are looking for cross-promotion for your campaign from the national party or for your state party event, or if you are looking for advice or for media contacts. We want to do what we can. Certainly the Coordinated Campaign Committee exists to help develop synergies between different campaigns and between the national party, and to support candidates and campaigns. And in my newly hired role as communications manager for the national party, I certainly want to help out with that as well. Tonight's topic regarding media relations and communication strategy. The opening slide here I've got in some big text. It's not about you, it's about them. And that's the overarching theme for this presentation. Because when I was talking to Hillary, what we've found is that something that candidates really get in their own way when they are thinking about, they're not thinking about how they appear to other people who don't already know them, who aren't already Greens, who aren't already on board with their message or what they what their primary goal is for their campaign. In order to win elected office, you have to persuade a lot of people who have no idea who you are and have no reason to trust you. And actually, because they see you coming as a politician, there's a lot of reasons they have to not trust you, right? Because the system has let them down so many times. And so the messaging mindset, the media mindset is, I see that Steve is asking for my email. It's meo@gp.org. And we can send contact information and slide materials for the folks who signed up for the webinar. So if you RSVP'd, you're good to go. But as I was saying, the media mindset is putting yourself in the perspective of the audience. And there's two primary audiences we're going to talk about in this webinar. There's the audience of journalists, the media professionals who you're trying to reach, who you're trying to persuade to cover your campaign, who you're trying to persuade to make time for your event as opposed to another thing happening in your city or state that they could be covering possibly at the same time. And then the second audience is the actual voters, the general public. And as you go throughout your campaign, you'll want to try to target that audience of the voters in a more granular way. And that could be its own campaign in and of itself, or I should say its own webinar in and of itself. But for this webinar, we're going to keep things at a bit more of a strategic overview, but I will try to get into some granular tips and tricks to get you started with your work. So getting back to, it's not about you, it's about them. You'll have candidates who, look, we're Greens, right? We are not conformists. We tend to be people who march to the beat of our own drummer. And that's fine. That's great. It's a wonderful way to live your life. But when you're seeking to be elected to office in the United States, you need to be prepared to present yourself in such a way that you will be seen as credible and that will be effective at persuading people to at least hear you out. And so we're going to talk about how that impacts your campaign. And so the secondary quote on my first slide here is, "It doesn't matter if you're always right if you are never heard." So again, it doesn't matter if you're always right if you're never heard. And this is another way that Greens, and I think a lot of folks on the left, we tend to get in our own way, thinking that, well, we've got the right policy. We've got the right answer. We have the solution. We're for the people. And if people don't take the time to listen to your answer or your proposal, or if people don't trust you that you're actually going to do what you say you're going to do, or if people don't find you credible that the proposal you're offering is actually going to work, then it doesn't actually really matter if you're correct. It doesn't matter if you have the right policy or if you have the right breakdown of the problems going on in your city or state or whatever level that you're running at. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And one of the ways that you show people that you care is by presenting yourself as a candidate in a way that is well put together, is coordinated and strategic and intentional. All right, I'm going to move on to the next slide here as soon as I bring back up my app. All right, so you will be seen before you will be heard. Building on the point I was just making, a lot of times I'll see literature from candidates from our milieu, and it will be like, say, a one-letter size sheet of paper with font that's maybe 12-point type, if that, and like their flyer, their literature, is basically a 500-word essay on a sheet of paper. And they expect to be able to hand this out to people and that they're actually going to read it. Well, people are busy, people are tired, people are distracted, and it doesn't matter how profound your wisdom or policy insights or solutions are in your 500-word essay if you don't actually entice people to read it. And you are working uphill when you are asking people to pay concentrated attention on something for more than a few seconds. You really only have 3 seconds to connect with people. And likewise, if you're giving an address, if you're speaking to a group or if you're speaking to a journalist, if you're doing it in a way where people physically cannot understand what you're saying, or if you appear to be completely different than the people that they've seen run for office before, then you are lowering the chance that they're actually going to listen to what you have to say and that they're actually going to hear what you're offering, that they're actually going to hear the mission of your campaign, what you're fighting for, and why they should vote for you. Now, there's an important disclaimer I want to outline right here, which is I'm going to talk a lot about image management in this webinar, and I'm going to talk about being willing to maybe dress a certain way or present yourself in a certain way that you're not used to. Now, the exception to that, and this is important, is that anything having to do with your cultural, ethnic, racial, religious identity, or anything else that's core to your identity as a human being, I am not asking you to censor or silence or to change that in any way. One of the reasons that we are fighting as Greens is that people, anyone, no matter what their ethnic, racial, cultural, religious background, should be able to participate in the public sphere. So, I'm going to maybe talk a little bit about wardrobe choices and things like that, but anything that goes against, your core upbringing of, who you are, you be you, as the kids say on the internet. So I just wanted to get that exception out of the way quickly. But the important thing is that if you being you in your mind is that you like to wear cargo shorts and a tie-dye T-shirt, and like that's just your vibe, man. Well, like that can be your vibe, but you're lowering the chances that people are going to vote for you to be elected for public office here in the United States. And you have a right to dress however you want, but you don't have a right to win the election that you're competing for. And so you have to decide kind of what's more important to you, that you never want to wear a suit, or that you actually win the office that you're seeking and that you're asking people to donate money to your campaign for, and you're asking people to spend their valuable time volunteering for you for, and you're asking people to give you their vote for. And I wish we lived in a world where these things didn't matter. I wish we lived in a world where you weren't judged by your wardrobe choices, that wearing an ill-fitting suit might make people think that you're an ill-suited candidate. But unfortunately, that is the world that we're living in. And I'm not saying that you need to go out and buy, Armani suits or whatever. But what I am advising is that you look at how candidates or how elected officials present themselves visually in your community, in the district that you're running in. And if fashion and visual presentation isn't really your thing, recruit friends and family, right, your trusted advisors, to look at those folks and say, okay, how can I fit into that? How can I be me in a way that I'm comfortable, but also meet people where they are in terms of their expectations of what a credible and charismatic candidate might look like. And that really has to trump. Well, what I really want to say is be willing to push your comfort zone. That if you're someone who isn't super comfortable wearing suits and things like that or dress shoes, be willing to push your comfort zone in the service of the effectiveness of your campaign. Think about the people who are donating to you. Think about the people who are volunteering for you. Do it for them. Do it for the people that you want to serve in office. The other disclaimer I want to highlight here is that I'm talking about being willing to make strategic adjustments to your visual presentation. I'm not talking about the content of your campaign. The content of your campaign should be bold and it should be radical, and we're going to elaborate that in a little bit. But all the stuff I'm talking about with your presentation is about getting in the door, getting people to listen to you, so then you can deliver the payload of your policies and your ideas. There's a gentleman here in New York State. His name is Jason West, and he was the boy mayor of New Paltz, New York, who helped put same-sex marriage here on the map in this state back in the early 2000s by solemnizing same-sex marriages before it was legal to have same-sex marriage in New York State, and he went to jail for that. He was elected as mayor, and he used his position as mayor to solemnize same-sex marriages, and he was arrested, and as it was an act of civil disobedience. And Jason West used to say, "Dress like a Republican, talk like an anarchist," and that was his political philosophy, or that's how he chose to phrase that. So we make strategic adjustments to our visual presentation so that we can get in the door to deliver the bold, radical proposals and policies that our society desperately needs.
Jason Stack?
Yeah, go ahead.
Just in case anyone looks up Jason West, his suit did not fit him well. So he tried very hard.
Fair enough. But he did try.
Yes, he tried very hard, but his suit never quite fit right.
All right, so a lot of what I've been talking about is building up to this first point of establishing credibility. And I do see that there's a few messages in the chat. I just want to make sure there's no critical issues here. Okay, good. All right, so it seems like we're humming along here. All right, so establishing credibility. I'm just bringing up the notes on my end here. All right. So you want to talk about what you have actually done as part of your story. Have you run a small business? Have you held local office before? Have you been a leader in the fight for social change in your community? Voters want to back a candidate that they trust, someone who has experience and who has more than just the ideas that they're presenting. And so you really want to identify what skills and experiences you would bring to the office that you're running for, and even more importantly, you want to be able to articulate why they make you the best choice for this job. Again, in your mind, you're thinking you're leading the fight for a Green New Deal, or to fight climate change, or for people and planet over profit. But for folks who have not spent a lot of their adult lives maybe thinking about those concepts, or for any other number of reasons, those things that are so immediate and so passionate for you, they don't feel the same way about that. So you need to be able to present evidence of why you're going to be effective in office. And that's going to help both with the audience of journalists and also with the general public. So the next point is you want to make it relevant. And so while you're going to be drawing from your background about things that you've done, things that you've achieved, that establish your credibility and your experience for what you're running for, you want to make sure that, again, you're looking at it from the perspective of people who do not know you very well, people who are not as familiar maybe with your previous experience. And so you want to make sure that you're framing both your campaign message and your experiences and your candidate qualifications in a way that is going to be relevant to folks who don't have that specific information about your backstory. So the best way to do that is to connect it to issues of concern in your local communities and craft the message to address those issues. Voters, for the most part, are acting in their own self-interest. So you're going to be communicating how you will address their specific concerns, from job creation to property taxes to improving schools. That's how you want to gain their support. And this can be really hard for Greens because we have the issues that we care about really desperately. In fact, maybe one or two issues that are the reason that you're running for office. But you have to understand that the reason that you're running for office may or may not be as important with the number of voters that you need to vote for you in order to win that office. So while there are the issues that you care about, and yes, you want to make them part of your campaign to raise awareness of them, but you also have to address the issues that are hot in the district that you're running in. And ideally, you're able to connect the policy or the issue that you care about the most to the issues that is on the minds of the voters in your district. And that's just good organizing. Being able to, take something that someone expresses to you from their personal life and being able to draw the connection to the larger systemic issues, like wage exploitation, like the lack of affordable housing in a community, being able to help voters connect the dots so that they can see that the things that are keeping them up at night or that have them stressed out when they wake up in the morning relate to the issues and policies that you are promoting in your campaign. You want to establish contrast. You are in a competition when you're running for office. I don't really think of myself as a competitive person. I never really was super into sports growing up. I suspect that many Greens maybe have a somewhat similar mindset. We tend not to think in competitive terms. We're for cooperation, right? We want worker co-ops. We're for cooperative economics. And so there is a reality that when you run for office, you are running in a competition. So it's not enough that you just have good ideas. You have to establish that you are the better candidate than your opponent. Voters have to make a choice, especially in our stupid, simple plurality election voting system for most of the country. Maine, of course, being a notable exception where they get to rank candidates in order of preference. But they're still having to choose, right? They're still ranking in order of preference, so there's still a competition there. And for most voters and most candidates in most elections in this country, they only get to indicate the preference for one candidate. So you've got to be that candidate. So you've got to frame your message and frame the debate in a way that makes you a better choice than your opponents. And so you need to tie your positives to your opponent's negatives. And by negatives, we're talking about substantive policy negatives. We're not talking about, quote, negative campaigning where you're attacking someone's personality or their identity. That's not what Greens do. We don't contribute to that kind of vitriol in our campaigns. Now, look, if someone's a racist, if someone's running on racist policies, then absolutely call them out on their racist policies. But what I'm talking about not being negative on is, just petty personal attacks that really don't have anything to do with the position. Tell the truth is our next concept we want to hit. And by telling the truth, whether you're touting your accomplishments or you are answering questions about your income taxes or highlighting your voting record, you want to explain, whoops, I think I skipped a slide. Let me go back. Oh, establish contrast? No. Okay, well, here we go. Tell the truth. So you, again, whether you're touting your accomplishments or highlighting your voting record if you've held office before, or explaining what you'll fight for once you're in office, you want to keep things honest. Voters respect candidates who they trust, and dishonest claims are likely to be discovered and exploited during the course of your campaign. Everything gets recorded, and so you want to make sure that your answers are truthful. More importantly, you want to make sure that you're well, I say more importantly, but what I mean is what's a more common problem is when you answer inaccurately. So you maybe said something that you thought was true at the time, but it turns out to be incorrect. Well, now you're in the position of having to backpedal and explain that, well, you were misinformed or you misremembered, and people are going to have to take your word for it that you were misinformed or that you misremembered. So it's a lot easier, as much discipline as it takes, it's still easier to try to be accurate the first time. And if you're asked something that you don't know the answer to, as a last resort, it's really better just to say that you don't have an answer at this time, or that you are looking to get more information about that, as opposed to just making something up or saying something that you're certain on that turns out is not true or not accurate, and that you're going to have to walk back later. All right, keep it simple. And this gets back to the 500-word essay as a piece of campaign literature, or the press release that's 5 pages long. You've probably got a lot of ideas, and I'm sure they're all brilliant, but people don't have time for them, and journalists certainly do not. So you need to keep your message simple, paint a picture with your message using simple language, avoid detailed legislative language or technical jargon, and keep your message to 2 or 3 salient points. I'm sure there's a lot more to say. I'm sure there's more precise terms that you could be using, but if those precise terms are going to alienate your audience, if it's going to make their eyes glaze over, then you're really working against yourself. The people who want to learn more can find out more on your campaign website, or they can follow up with you or a member of your volunteer team. But it gets back to that if people aren't listening to you, then it doesn't matter how right you are. So for that sake, we have to keep it simple. Make a connection, tell your story. And this gets back to they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. You want to tell your personal story in a way that gives people a sense of a human connection to you, that you're not just a walking, talking basket of ideas and policies. You are someone who is driven by passion. You are someone who is driven by a desire to help their community. You are someone who is driven by an anger at injustice, and that you are a human being who came from somewhere, and that you've had experiences in your life with your family, with your loved ones, with your friends, with your job, that brought you to this position of being willing to sacrifice your time and energy and resources to put yourself in the electoral arena and do battle against this corporate duopoly cartel so that you can get into office and fight, continue to fight to make things better for your community. And people are looking for that. And people want to know that they can trust you, and one of the ways that you can establish they can trust you is by letting them know that you've had experiences that are similar to them. People want to vote for people who are like themselves. They are going to connect more easily and more readily to your personal story than just to abstract issues and facts. And so if you're explaining your personal and difficult experience placing your parent in a nursing home, that will convey your commitment to single-payer universal health care and towards fully funded adequate facility for our aging population, rather than just citing statistics about how much of the population is aging and the cost of health care. But if you talk about the heartbreak that you've had experience when making health care sacrifices for yourself, or God forbid, involving a loved one, then they're going to connect to that a lot more powerfully, and they're going to remember you, which is important, and they're going to trust your message more. There's a lot of resources out there about the story of self. I recommend plugging that into your preferred search engine. There's different books, webinars, papers about using the story of self in organizing, whether it's as a candidate or as an issue organizer, and that would be a really great, I'd say, follow-up step for candidates, or for people who are working with candidates. Again, a big thing where Greens tend to get in the way of themselves is they can go on at length about a policy or about the history of their neighborhood or their community, and they leave themselves out of it. They don't talk about themselves. And people, not only do they want to hear your story, they need to hear your story. It's not, I think our instinct is that we're being self-aggrandizing when we're talking about our story. We think maybe we're exploiting our past, and I get that it can be difficult. You're making yourself vulnerable in a way when you're already being vulnerable in a lot of ways as a candidate. But this is what voters need, and you need those voters. So I really encourage exploring that as a discipline for candidates. Repeat, repeat, repeat. Speaking of discipline for candidates, message discipline is so key. And this gets back to simplicity. It's not just simplicity when you're explaining a particular topic and having 3 key points when you're explaining a topic. Your campaign also needs to be pared down to maybe, well, ideally 1 core message that everything connects back to. And I know that we have a lot of ideas that we want to communicate, and I think we get tired of hearing ourselves talk about the same thing over and over, and we assume that, oh, surely people must be bored of hearing about this. But actually no, because the person you're speaking to most likely, even if they've heard you speak before, they most likely don't remember it. People need to hear things 3, 4, 5 times before it really sinks in. And you know, the first couple times they hear you or they see your flyer, it may not even register with them on a conscious level at all. So you're going to get sick of your message long before the voting population or even the media gets sick of your message. And you have to be disciplined about, no matter what anyone asks you, you want to answer them honestly in the sense of you're responding in a way that's relevant to their question or concern, but you also want to tie it back to that core message of your campaign, the core theme or the core policy that you are running on. And that theme and policy needs to be something that you have put in some legwork into verifying that it matters to the voters. All right. I want to go back here to this little chart. So for those of you who are on the phone who can't see what I'm presenting, I have a grid up, a grid of 4 boxes. And in the upper left-hand corner, it says what we say about us. In the right-hand corner, it says what we say about them. In the lower left-hand corner, it says what they say about us. And in the lower right-hand corner, it's what they say about them. So again, what we say about us, what we say about them, what they say about us, and what they say about them. And in the case of them, in this case, we're talking about your opponents. So what do we say about, what do we want to say about ourselves as a candidate, as a campaign, as a state party or a county organization? What are they saying, they being the opposition, about us? And if you have no idea what your opposition is saying about you, then you need to find out. Either they don't know about you, which is probably not a good thing because that means that most people in your voting universe don't know about you either. Or they are talking about you and you have no idea, but you need to know, you need to find out, like, what are your perceived weaknesses or what are your perceived shortcomings? Or if there are voters out there saying, oh, I think it's really great that this person belongs to a trade union, you know, and then you want to grab onto that and make sure you're elevating that as part of your campaign messaging if that's something that you've not been highlighting. If there's an aspect of your policies, your history that's resonating with folks in a good way, then you want to build on that. And then what are we saying, what do we say about them? So being very disciplined about your messaging about your opponents, because again, you need to draw that contrast between you and them to establish that you are the better candidate. But you want to do so in a way that is keeping with our values as Greens, and that whatever you are saying about your opponents is verifiable and credible and isn't going to bite you later on in the campaign. And then finally, what they say about themselves. So how are the candidates who are the opposition, or maybe the opposition in an issue campaign, what are they saying about themselves? How do they characterize themselves? You need to analyze that so you can poke holes in their argument and that you can be strategic about how they are refuting their claims, and then also figuring out how to balance your message about how you are proposing or putting yourself forward in order to, again, counter those claims. So I'm just drawing up a couple additional notes here, and this meeting application is giving my computer fits. So if you are willing to bear with me for just a moment. I want to make sure I got all that. So you put that grid on a big sheet of paper, a whiteboard, or a chalkboard, and you want to fill in everything you know in those squares to fill out that information as much as possible. And you know, definitely bring in help. You want to bring in people who you know, maybe they know the opposition a little bit better than you do, or maybe there are, you know, parts of your district that people have things to say about you that you haven't heard before. And when we talk about what we as the candidates say about the opposition, maybe you don't say those things directly, but you should at least know what they are, so that you can frame your messaging strategy around that, and frame your highlights in a way that contrasts against their weaknesses. So if you do this correctly, the complete message box, that's what we call this, a message box, it should outline everything that could possibly be said during the election, both by your candidate and all of your major opponents. And this includes things that may go unsaid or charges made by implication. For example, if you say that you are the most experienced candidate, by implication you are saying your opponents lack experience. By saying you are honest, you can imply that your opponents are corrupt. Your opponents can do this to you as well. If, for example, they say they care about education, they're implying you do not care about education. How will you respond to their charges, both stated and implied? Often the difficulty is putting yourself in the role of your opponents, view your opponents positively and yourself negatively. Remember, just because your opponents say it does not mean, just because your opponent says it doesn't mean that it's true. The real question is, what will the voters believe? Again, it's about them, not about you. If you do not respond to what your opposition says, the voters may take your opponent's information as the truth. So that's like the first 2/3 kind of the material that I have here. The next is to go into some, you know, kind of more ground level, just like tactics and tools. I see in the chat some people are talking about ranked choice voting not being the end all be all. I'm a single transferable vote advocate myself. I'm a big fan of proportional representation along with ranked choice voting. I think ranked choice voting, getting on the books in places, is a great step towards that, and I really applaud the efforts of folks who've been able to get ranked choice voting established in their communities. So, and I think those are campaigns that we can learn a lot from. So any questions about what I've presented so far at this sort of 30,000 feet level? So Lon says thank you. Steve says thank you. Thank you all. Thanks for listening. And let me wrap up here with a few tools that I think maybe can help
Michael?
with your... Yes. Go ahead.
This is Matt from Boston.
Hey, Matt.
I just raised ranked choice voting because it's interesting to me to see it becoming such a powerful grassroots campaign in Maine, and now here where I am in Massachusetts, around an issue that really I felt like it was like difficult to explain what it is. It's difficult to explain what it's solving for people who aren't, and thinking outside of the two-party system. And yet, it's something that kind of like policy insiders and like math nerds seem to be into, but somehow the messaging worked in a way that they were actually able to win it in Maine, and they've been able to build a movement here in Massachusetts. So that's just kind of why I brought up. At one point you were talking about keeping it simple and avoiding complexity or technical jargon, and so I guess maybe that's an example of a way that even if the issue seems like it intractably falls into that category, there may be a way to work around those kinds of problems.
Absolutely, and I think the RCV campaign, both in Maine and as it's being waged in Massachusetts, is very instructive. And I just so happens that at the Green Party annual national meeting this summer, as part of the kind of wrapping up, it was the final presentation for the A&M. There was the campaigner from the Massachusetts campaign currently underway, and he gave a really great demonstration elevator pitch from the stage, talking about how he likes to show people ranked choice voting visually. He actually shows them the ballot, and how much that really clears the way when you actually show someone a ballot. Maybe it's a laminated card you keep in your pocket. Maybe it's an image that you keep ready to display on your phone. But just showing people that you rank your preferences 1, 2, 3. And how, in that case, a picture really does speak 1,000 words. And we have to be innovative when we are advocating for positions that are outside of the mainstream. And many of the solutions that we call for are outside of the political mainstream, or they've been very, very recently adopted by the mainstream, right? And that's to our credit as Greens, who've been blazing those trails for years. But still, there's a lot of work to be done. And so it takes creativity and innovation and being willing to work visually and not just rhetorically to convey the ideas that we have. So I will try to remember to include a link to that. I shot a video of him giving that little elevator pitch from my, I just recorded it with my camera phone from the audience. But it's discernible, and I think it's a good example. But I want to wrap up here before maybe it gets too past 10 o'clock Eastern time. So when you're actually dealing with reporters, right, you want to be targeted in your outreach. And we make the assumption that a lot of people, like they just get a whole list of a bunch of media contacts, and they think, well, why wouldn't they be interested in my campaign? Well, actually, there's a lot of reasons why a particular reporter might not be interested in their campaign. If they cover sports or the weather, they're busy covering the sports and the weather, not politics. And even though you might think your campaign is more important than the sports or the weather, that's not their job, and you're not going to convince them otherwise. So you need to target the reporters who are covering politics in your district, and ideally who are actually covering your campaign. If you get a media list that includes everything from the publisher of the newspaper to the janitor, and you think it's a great idea to message all of them, you're just digging yourself a hole. Because what's going to if you send a reporter a news release or a bunch of news releases that are not related to their beat, to their topic that they cover, then when you actually do have something that relates to them, they might ignore you, or they might already have you on their spam filter because you sent them things that are unrelated. Journalists are busy. Some of them, well, this is being recorded, so I'll just say that journalists are really busy, and so they would really prefer not to have to filter through things that are unrelated to what they cover. So be targeted. You can check the contact information for journalists who are covering your opponents or who have written about the previous campaign years for whatever it is that you or your campaign is running for. A lot of times you can find the email information for a journalist on their newspaper's website. The national party has access to media lists. Your state party has access to media lists. I'm still getting clear on what's the actual mechanism for distributing that or sharing that with Green Party nominated candidates. But there are things out there. Maybe people who've run for office previously, or people in your state party, previous candidates have lists that they can share with you. And also, a lot of journalists are on Twitter, so it's a good thing to maybe send a tweet at a journalist with a link to your press release, again, when it's relevant. And if a journalist lets you know that they only want to be contacted in a certain way, then it's really in your best interest to follow that. And again, it's about them, it's not about you. In an ideal world, we would have journalists who treat all candidates equally and who would make themselves available to us whenever we needed them, but they have a job to do, and they've got editors breathing down their necks, and so you have to put yourself in the mindset of like a personal assistant to the journalist. It's your job to facilitate the journalist's coverage of your campaign rather than thinking of your campaign as being entitled to coverage. And I know that the corporate media can be a bear, and you know, there's all of those problems, right? Systemic and on down to the level of individuals. But you have chosen to enter into the electoral arena and do battle against the corporate duopoly, knowing that we have a corporate-dominated media. So, you know, skydivers don't get to complain about gravity. You need to just accept that this is what you've entered into, and be willing to put yourself in that position of, like I said, being almost like think of yourself as a personal assistant to these journalists to help them cover your campaign, and be targeted. Be useful. You want to send reporters information that they can actually act on. So trying to connect your campaign to hot topics going through the news cycle, whether it's hyper-local or statewide, you want to tie your campaign into something that they're already covering, because that adds grist to the story that they're already working on. You're now like actually adding, you're adding value to the story they're working on. You're not just saying, come cover my campaign, look at me. You're being useful to them. And not only does it make you more likely to get coverage for that particular story or that particular piece, it makes you more likely that they will think positively about you in the future, either the next time you pitch them, or even better, the next time they're looking for quotes, they might actually come to you because you gave them something helpful and juicy in a previous story. So whether it's events going on in your district, evergreen anniversaries, or just things that are running through the news cycle, or you're letting them know about something that happened that's significant and that will be of interest to them as reporters. And a good metric of that is it of interest to your actual community? If you're able to actually help them break news, that's amazing. You want to be bold. This is a time where anti-establishment candidates have a lot of momentum, and so this is a time where Greens really need to let their bold ideas fly and to really be unapologetic about our platform as the Green Party and as Green candidates. People are starving for real solutions because they see that the system is breaking down all around us. They are seeing it break down in the climate. They're seeing it break down in the economy. They are seeing vicious misogynists and white supremacists and homophobes and transphobes rising in our country in a lot of cases and at the highest levels of government. So people are they're ready for our platform, and a lot of our ideas are long overdue. So I advise you to be targeted and keep it simple, right? Avoid jargon, but be bold in the scale of what you're proposing, as long as it's actually like relevant to the office that you're running for. And just go for it from that perspective. That's where I really want to encourage you to, as long as you're connecting it to what voters are thinking about, really go for the radical position. Time waits for no candidate. In fact, it's working against you. Journalists are not time travelers, and they cannot be in two places at once. So if you want a reporter to be at your press conference, they need to know about it they need to get an advisory about it the day before, at the very least, and then they need to get a reminder of it early that morning. I would say before 8:30 a.m. in the time zone that you're in. Most reporters have morning meetings, and so you don't want to get them too early, because if you send them something about an event that's 2 weeks away, they're not going to pay any attention to it. They're going to forget about it by the time it comes around. You want to get them at that point when they're planning what they're going to cover for a specific day. So you're giving them a heads up say the morning or the afternoon before your event, and then you want to send them another media release. You could send them the press release that kind of describes what happened at your event, even though your event hasn't happened yet. And as long as you're not as long as you're talking about a press conference that's been choreographed, you know what's going to happen, so it's okay to sort of have the press release written ahead of time to have in your hands at the event, so you can give it copies to journalists who showed up, and you can even have it distributed it that morning saying, this is what's going to happen. There's a fine line between the media advisory, which is a sort of factual who, what, when, where, why that's going to happen, and then there's the press release, which is more narrative and includes more quotes from you as the candidate and any guest that you have speaking at your event, and that's what gets ideally incorporated into the final article. But no matter what you send them, if you don't send it to them with enough time for them to actually schedule it into their activities for the day, then you're not going to get any coverage. They're not going to show up. So make sure you are on time with your media advisories, which again should go out the day before, and news releases the morning of. And you can ask journalists, just ask them like, hey, like what's a good time to send you a media advisory? Like, when are you planning your day? When's your morning editorial meeting? They'll let you know. You're trying to make their job easier for them, and they want to help you do that. So how do we distribute news releases and media advisories? 99.9% of the time is going to be over email. And so I've got on screen here a couple different ways of distributing email releases to journalists, and depending on the scale of the district that you're running on and the number of journalist contacts you have, you need to make some choices. So the first option, if you have Nation Builder for your campaign, then you can use Nation Builder as your e-blast system. You can keep reporters in your database as prospects as opposed to supporters, because you want to make sure that you're not just sending journalists your e-blasts, right? Your supporter e-blasts or your donation appeals. Remember, we want to be targeted when we are sending things to journalists. We want to send things that are relevant to them. So when you're sending out a news release to a list, you want to have a section of your email list that's carved out for when you only are emailing journalists when you intend to email journalists, and you're doing so in a targeted way. If you're not paying for Nation Builder, you can use the service MailChimp, and I imagine a lot of folks on this call are familiar with that. You can have up to like 2,000 contacts in your MailChimp database for free and send about 2,000 email messages per month. And that's one way you can distribute. Now, if you're using Nation Builder and MailChimp to distribute your email releases, there is the drawback that the journalists are going to know that they are on a mass email list, and they will have the option to unsubscribe from your email list by just clicking a link, right? Now, the next couple options I'm going to talk about are for sending a email release to a list of people just from your computer and not through a third-party service. The benefit of this is that it makes it seem more like just an individual email was sent to the journalist Now, if they reply to you and say, please don't send me any more news releases, you need to comply with that, and you need to respect their request to unsubscribe them. Now, you're not going to mass carbon copy journalists. Never do that. Don't mass CC journalists. They really don't like to see that they've gotten a news release and then see the email addresses of all their competitors that who are getting the same thing. That's going to diminish your credibility in their eyes. So the optimal way that I've found for sending to a list of reporters from your computer, there are two routes I want to recommend. One is an email program called Thunderbird, and that is a free email program from the makers of Firefox, which you might be familiar with, the web browser. And with Thunderbird, you can connect it to your email account, whether it's Gmail or IMAP or another service. And then there's a plugin called Mail Merge. And the plugin for Thunderbird can be found in the extensions directory, just like you find plugins for Firefox or for Chrome or whatever browser that you use. You can plug into your search engine of choice Mail Merge for Thunderbird. And it gives you an extension you can download and install into Thunderbird. Both of these programs are free. And if you've ever done Mail Merge to print out address labels or something like that, this accomplishes the same thing, only by automatically generating individual emails to the list of people that you are sending to. So rather than sending one email to a blind carbon copied list, this will generate, 10, 50, or 100 individual messages based on the list that you plug into it. And that way each reporter appears to be getting an email that was sent just to them and doesn't have branding from Nation Builder or MailChimp or an unsubscribe link. If you don't want to go the route of Thunderbird and you are using Windows 10 and you have access to Microsoft Office, then you can use Outlook plus Microsoft Word to generate an email merge so that, again, you're automatically generating emails to that list of people directly from your computer. And then another tool I want to recommend, this is a web-based tool, and this is for actually managing your list of reporters. And this is, again, if you're not already using Nation Builder. If you're not paying for Nation Builder, there's a free tool called HubSpot. And specifically, it's HubSpot CRM. And that's spelled H-U-B as in boy, S-P as in Pauline, O-T, HubSpot. And you want to look for HubSpot CRM. CRM stands for Constituent Relationship Manager. And if you've ever worked in Nation Builder and you've worked with the people database in Nation Builder, where you've got all these different records of people and their different fields for contact information and interaction history and donation history and things like that, that's a constituent relationship manager. In the world of business, they call it a customer relationship manager. Well, HubSpot CRM is a free CRM. You can have as many contacts as you want. And what's really cool about HubSpot is, let's say you get the email address of Jane Doe at poughkeepsiejournal.com, right, the Poughkeepsie Journal newspaper. When you actually plug into your HubSpot database, Jane Doe at poughkeepsiejournal.com, HubSpot will go on the web and see the Poughkeepsie Journal website and will automatically associate this contact that you've created with the Poughkeepsie Journal as their company that they work for, which saves you a step. And if you're a media geek and you've been struggling with contact databases for years and years, it's pretty cool. But you can create custom fields in HubSpot. You can track interactions with people. You can actually email people from your own, again, Gmail or IMAP account, whatever it is, through HubSpot in a way that tracks your interactions with them, so that you can get a sense of, okay, this journalist was interested in this particular story, but not that particular topic. This journalist, just covered me this past week, so I'm not going to be expecting them to cover me again for maybe another couple weeks or whatever. And you can also use this for, theoretically, for your supporter database too. And the cool thing is that HubSpot integrates with MailChimp. So HubSpot is free, MailChimp is free, and they can connect to each other for free as well. So you can actually use MailChimp as the thing that's generating your bulk emails and is distributing them, but you can have more granular information about the journalists that you're developing relationships with in HubSpot. So those are some tools that you can look at. Again, just never mass carbon copy journalists, and send journalists things that you have reason to believe that they will actually find useful and interesting. All right, that is my presentation. I hope it was coherent, and I'm happy to field questions at this time. Again, I'm Michael O'Neill, Communications Manager for the Green Party of the United States. You can reach me by email at meo@gp.org. That's MEO for Michael E. O'Neill at GP as in greenparty.org. You can also find me on Twitter at Michael E. O'Neill. That's O-N-E-I-L. Any questions?
Thanks, Mike.
Yes,
I thought this was a really good presentation. Just wanted to say.
Oh, thank you, Holly. Let's see. Lou asks, are you maintaining a separate list in MailChimp and HubSpot? No, Lou, it's one list. So what's happening is that you're synchronizing your list between HubSpot and MailChimp, and then you can segment your list using the features within those programs as well. I think I heard.
Thanks, Michael.
You're very welcome. Was there someone else who wanted to get on Stack?
Jason Stack.
Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, that last part, just for anyone who's running like really localized elections, you know, don't get overwhelmed with some of the managing of, you know, reporter contacts, because in your elections you're only going to have, you know, maybe 2 or 3 people that might ever be reporting on your local election, and you're better off actually, you know, getting to know like Caitlin Cordero from the Poughkeepsie Journal and sitting down and meeting with her and early on and building more personal relationships. So if you're running for like a village level election or something like that, I wouldn't try and get overwhelmed with the other programs. I think they're much better for, you know, statewide or larger type of elections.
That's an excellent point, and I appreciate you bringing it up. Just whether it's 3 journalists or 30 journalists, don't mass carbon copy them. Don't let them see who else you're emailing. Absolutely. So we have a request for me to mention the 3 seconds to get someone's attention. Right. So whether it's a video that someone is watching about your campaign, or whether it's you speaking in a town hall or speaking to someone on their doorstep, you really only have a few seconds to establish yourself as someone that they should invest their next 3 minutes or 5 minutes or 30 seconds as worth listening to. And first impressions do matter. And we say we should never judge a book by its cover, and each and every one of you as Green Party candidates and campaigners are a beautiful and unique book that is filled with wonderful wisdom and passion and justice, but people will be judging you by your cover, and so you got to make your cover as effective as you can. All right. We have a question. In mentioning the duopoly, I later answered a question of using Democrats and Republicans are ready for by the people are ready. Is this correct? Don't bring in opposing parties specifically. Well, I'd say if you're talking specifically about what Democrats and Republicans have done to, and Democrat and Republican leadership or Democrat and Republican officials, the power structure, right? If you're talking about something that the power structure has done to obstruct progress, then I think you should name them, call them out. If you're talking about something like an idea that's ready, then yeah, instead of saying, well, you know, the Democratic candidates have accepted, or many of them have accepted Medicare for all, it's probably more effective to say, you know, the people are clamoring for Medicare for all. And or maybe you can imply that even more mainstream candidates have finally accepted what Greens have been saying for years, which is that single-payer universal health care, expanded Medicare for all, is the only humane way to finance our medical needs in this country. That's my best answer to that question. Any other questions, either over chat or... Okay, so M asks, why no mass CC? Can you use BCC? So you don't want to do mass carbon copy for journalists because it's just considered rude within the realm of media relations for a journalist to get an email where they can see the other publications, their rival publications, that are getting the same information. They just don't like it. Now, I know that surely they must know when they get an email that the same thing is being sent to their rivals, but they just don't like to see that. Now, as a last resort, and again, if you only have a handful of contacts, right, that you have to send to for your local campaign, a blind carbon copy is okay. It's fine. The important thing is that your release gets out, that it gets out on time, and that you have the time to do the other necessary things of your campaign, ranging from raising money to door knocking and all the other things that you have to do. So don't get, as Jason recommended, don't get hung up on the software I was talking about if you're not really operating at that scale. But if you really are only sending to a handful of people, then I would just take the time to actually send individual emails. If you're only sending to 3 journalists, send them individual emails and actually say, hi, Jane Doe, or hi, Alex Smith. Thank you for coming out to my event last week. Keep it short, right? Super short. The important point is that we're not trying to load them with a lot of like interpersonal contact. We just want to signal to them that you're a human being that's actually emailing them as a human being, and they're going to appreciate that as opposed to just being on the end of some massive list. So whether it's just putting a personalized address to them by name in the email that you're sending and then your press release, then that can be a value add. Okay, so go ahead, Holly.
Yeah, I just had one other thing to add. Not only is it considered rude, kind of this weird etiquette rule, but what I am aware of, or was made aware of, is that people who are in journalism or who are reporters and editors, if they see other people are going to be covering something, they're less apt to think, ooh, this might be a scoop I can get, or a unique thing I can get. They see everybody else is going, so they may be more intrigued if they're not aware that they're not the only ones getting the information. Like you said, they probably know better, but if they think that they're being offered something unique and they don't know where else it might be going, they may be more apt to respond.
Excellent points. I completely agree. Now, one of the benefits of actually developing a relationship with a journalist where they know you by face and they know you by name is that you actually can choose to pitch them on something that is exclusive if you think that there's a decent chance they're going to take you up on it. And the art of the pitch of not just sending someone a press release, but actually sending something that's kind of crafted to get their attention just based on what you know to be their preferences of the kinds of stories and angles that they like to cover, and things that based most often on things that they've covered recently or at least in the past, then that is a frequently overlooked part of media relations. We get caught up in just like transmitting and broadcasting press releases. Actually taking the time to craft a story idea or an idea for coverage that fits in with what you know to be their personal and professional interests, it takes more time, but has a higher likelihood of success. Okay, I think we're ready to wrap up here. Thank you all for spending this time with me, and look forward to your following up, and I wish you all luck on the campaign trail. And I have some links to that elaborate on some of the material I spoke about, and I will work with Hillary to get those links sent out to the RSVP list. And so if you didn't RSVP for this webinar, just email me or email the CCC if you have that address, and we'll make sure you get the materials for this. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great night.